sold my car to help my brother pay off debt, only to discover he lied about owing money and was using the cash to impress a new girlfriend while telling everyone I was selfish for not offering him even more. I signed the papers with this odd lump in my throat, like I'd swallowed something too big and it was stuck halfway down. The dealer man was smiling, pumping my hand, congratulating me on getting a good deal for an older vehicle. I smiled and nodded back, but as soon as I was outside I struck this wave of regret in my chest. That car wasn't just a car, it was mine. I'd saved for 2 years to buy it, washed it every Sunday, knew every little sound it made. It still smelled faintly like vanilla air freshener and coffee from all the mornings I'd sat in the driver's seat before work. But my brother Jason had called me 3 nights before, voice tight and panicked. He told me he was in terrible trouble, credit card debt, late fees piling up, people threatening him. He explained he had been too ashamed to ask previously, that this was life or death for his credit. He promised to repay me as soon as possible, maybe in a year. I didn't even think twice. I just needed to help. He's my baby brother. I'd always done it for him, even when I literally couldn't afford to. I went into my apartment following the sale and deposited the envelope of cash onto the counter and stared at it. It was denser than it should have been. I called Jason and told him that I had it. He was all but laughing, claimed he'd be over in an hour. He showed up in 40 minutes, wearing cologne and a shirt I'd never seen before. He gave me this quick hug, the kind where your shoulders barely touch, and snatched the envelope. I thought he would sit, maybe explain to me what had happened, but all he said was, "You have no idea how much this means to me, and then, I'll pay you back sooner than you think." He was off before I even had time to ask him how much he owed specifically, or to whom he owed it. I didn't hear from him much for the following days. I guessed maybe he was getting his ducks in a row, making calls to banks, whatever people do when they're organizing their financial affairs. I told myself it was a good thing. But Friday, I was at the grocery store and ran into someone I recognized, a high school acquaintance of his. She spotted me in the cereal aisle, smiled, and said, "Oh hi, I ran into Jason last night. You didn't inform me he's seeing someone new. She is stunning." I kind of laughed awkwardly, as I hadn't been told anything about it. The friend kept talking about how they were at this upscale rooftop club downtown, Jason ordering bottles like it was his birthday. My stomach twisted so hard I had to let go of my basket. That night I called him. He answered the second ring, music blaring in the background. "Hi, I'm busy right now, can I call you back?" I said to him. "No, Jason, I have a question. Did you pay your debt with that money or not?" There was this long silence. Then he told me, "Why are you concerned with what I did with it? You said it was a gift." My voice caught. "It wasn't a gift. I sold my car for that. I thought you owed debt money." He breathed out hard, as if I was being obstinate. "Look, I did owe some money. I just had other things to take care of. You wouldn't get it." He hung up the phone before I could say anything else. I remained seated in my kitchen for a very long time, staring at the vacant area where my keys once hung. I remembered all the rides that I'd given him over the years, the times that I'd stepped into his position with Mom, the instances where I defended him to friends when they called him selfish. I tried to rationalize in my mind that maybe there was another way to the story, maybe the girlfriend thing was a misunderstanding. But then 2 days later I get contacted by my cousin. It seemed Jason had been telling the rest of the family how I was cheap for giving him just enough money to scrape by, and that I could have given him more if I cared. Hearing that, it was like a person reached in and yanked something out. I didn't even know where to put that kind of pain. I'd done something that stripped me of all my freedom and convenience, and for it, he was out here making me the villain in his story. That night I lay awake. I just lay there listening to cars drive by outside, each one sounding like my car used to, and I kept thinking, I didn't just get rid of my car, I got rid of my trust in him, and I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to reclaim that. The next day, I woke up to my phone ringing beside the bed. It was a group message from my mom, my aunt, and Jason. My aunt had shared some cheeseball inspirational meme about how family is life's greatest treasure, and my mom had replied with a string of heart emojis. Jason, of course, spoke up with, "Unless your family doesn't think you're worth helping," and then, "Some people have cars but no compassion." I just stared at the screen, my chest tightening. He knew what he was doing, not spelling my name out, but referring me to it. Mom asked him what he was trying to say, and he spelled out, "Ask her." That's when I recognized that this wasn't just some misunderstanding. He was building a whole story where I was the bad guy. I didn't react. I just barely awoken, had made a cup of coffee, and sat at my small kitchen table trying to utilize my brain. My brain kept racing back to one question. Why? Why take it this far? If he wanted to spend the money on a girlfriend, fine. I wouldn't have liked it, but fine. But this, playing people against me, it was personal. Around noon, I finally gave in and called my mom. She answered in that hesitant tone she uses when she's already made up her mind but pretending to be objective. "Honey, Jason informs me you wouldn't loan him money," she started. I breathed and replied, "I sold my car, Mom. The one you said was the best decision I ever made. I sold it to pay him cash. And he didn't use it to pay for debt. He brought it in to show off." She hesitated, then sighed. "Well, maybe he needed happiness in his life." I wanted to scream. Instead, I just said, "I hope his happiness was worth my car," and hung up before I started to cry. That afternoon, I went for a walk because I could not stand to be indoors. I walked past a bus stop and saw some dude my age or thereabouts standing around in the cold, scrolling through his phone, waiting. It struck me. That was my life now. Waiting. Dependent. I'd given up my freedom to travel wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted, to learning to schedule my day according to the bus routes and asking fellow workers for rides. I felt small, not due to the car, but due to what it symbolized to lose it for nothing. 7 days later, I discovered via Instagram, not from him, that Jason had taken his new girl to the beach for the weekend. Pictures of them on the boardwalk, having seafood, bike rentals, sunset over the ocean. On one photo, she's wearing a gold bracelet I've taken an oath I've seen in the show window of one of the downtown shops. The kind of thing you don't buy if you're struggling to pay off bills. My hand was shaking, really, when I scrolled. All the posts were people saying how cute they were together, how lucky she was. One of his friends even wrote, "Jason, you're spoiling her, man," and he replied with a wink emoji. I wanted to throw my phone out the window. I didn't block him though. I couldn't. There was still some part of me that wanted him to wake up one day and see what he'd done and perhaps apologize. But the longer it took, the more terrible it was. He started posting these vague quotes about fake people and family that only helps when it benefits them. And the comments? People agreeing with him, some even tagging me. I'd never felt so exposed in my own life. It's one thing to have someone lie to your face. It's another to watch them rewrite reality in front of an audience. It was about 2 weeks after the sale when I caught sight of him in person. I was leaving the corner coffee shop when he pulled up in this black SUV. Not brand new, but definitely newer than his old vehicle. He rolled down the window with this enormous smile and said, "Hey, you like my new ride?" I could barely say anything for a few moments. I just stared at him. "So that's where my car went," I finally said. He laughed, as if I'd been joking. "Chill out. I got a deal, and you should see her face when I pick her up in it. Totally worth it." I felt my fists tighten, my whole body shaking with this mix of anger and sadness. "I sold my car, Jason. I'd caught rain buses for 2 weeks so you could do this?" He shrugged. "It's just money. You'll bounce back. You always do." Those words, "you always do," they emptied me out. Because it was true. I'd always been able to fix things, to get things all right for him, for everyone. But there I was on that sidewalk, watching him drive away in something that I'd helped pay for, indirectly, and knowing that I was tired of bouncing back. That night, I deleted his number. I didn't block him. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of thinking he'd driven me that far. But I took away my easy access to him. If he wanted to call me, he'd have to actually work at it. And I promised myself something. No more rescuing him, no matter how things ended up. Because clearly, the only one I was saving was him. And the only one losing anything was me. For a while after I cut contact, it was like this odd silence had entered my life. No calls, no messages, no word from Jason. At first, I thought maybe he was attempting to provide me with space. But internally, I knew he was not. I just could not help but ask myself how someone you'd always trusted could turn and change the whole story in such a manner. Like I was the selfish one, the villain. I was replaying every one of our conversations that month, trying to find some sign that maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe I was overreacting. But no, reality was in front of me. I'd been used, plain and simple. My phone buzzed with a message from a strange number one afternoon. It was an image. A screenshot of a group chat where they were all joking about me, having no clue about family loyalty, and saying I was stingy with the money. My stomach dropped so hard I almost dropped my phone. I didn't wish to respond. I wanted to delete everything and pretend none of it existed. But here's the thing. I opened that discussion and I read each horrible word. Because sometimes, when you are already hurting, it is somehow even more painful when all the people who are around you gang up on your side. I sat on my sofa, staring at that screen, and just feeling this raw, aching aloneness. I thought about phoning my mom, but I knew how that would go. She was caught in the middle of us. Or maybe she just wanted to take Jason's side because it was easier. I wanted to scream, but the only sound was my own shaky breathing. And I knew I had to learn how to stop caring about what all of them thought, because the more I did, the more I hurt. I grabbed a notebook that night and started writing down everything. What I was feeling, what I needed to say to Jason, my family, to myself. Getting it down on paper diluted the anger a bit, like I was finally going to be able to get the poison out of my system word by word. I wrote about how I'd lost my car, yeah, but more than that, I'd lost my faith in someone I'd idolized my whole life. And how maybe, just maybe, I needed to stop trying to be the hero in his story. 2 weeks went by, and then I received a call from a mutual friend. She told me that Jason's new girlfriend wasn't exactly who she said she was, that there had been whispers about her not treating him very well, using his money and taking advantage of him for her own gain. I had this bitter ache in my chest. Here I'd been worrying I was the fool, but maybe he was too, or maybe the two of them were playing each other. It didn't resolve anything, but hearing that made me feel less alone, like I wasn't the only one who could look past the shiny surface. Gradually, I started to get the pieces of my own life back together. I rode the bus more, worked overtime, started to save again. The ache of losing my car dissipated bit by bit, replaced by this muted determination. I didn't know what the future held for me or for Jason, but one thing I did know. I couldn't keep losing myself trying to save someone who didn't need saving. There were moments I'd catch myself thinking, maybe I should call. Maybe I should see why he lied, why he turned everyone against me. But every time I thought about it, my heart clenched too hard, and I realized that some questions don't have answers that make everything alright. Sometimes all you can do is go on, even when it hurts. And that's where I am today, not with a fairy tale ending, but with a clearer sense of who I am without the weight of his lies and the destruction he left behind him. I sold my car to help my brother, yeah, and maybe that was a mistake. Yet it did make me learn something I did not wish to know, that love does not equate to letting yourself get used, and the hardest thing to do is sometimes to walk away from family. After weeks of silence, I finally heard from Jason once more. It was not a text or a call, but rather a Facebook message, something short and a little odd. He wrote, "Hey, I know I messed up. I don't think you'll forgive me. Just wanted you to know." I stared at it for a while, heart racing. A part of me longed to respond and unload everything, the pain, the betrayal, the anger. But another part of me recognized that what I really needed to do was protect myself from falling into the same old pattern. I didn't answer. I didn't look at the message and instead stared out the window, where rain fell in slow, measured drops. It was as though the sky was crying as well, as though it knew that there were some things words couldn't fix. I thought about the car I sold, the memories of years together, and how much I let go of for someone who never really had my back. But I also thought about what I'd gained: clarity, strength, the courage to say no to being used. I remember sitting in a coffee shop a few days later, writing in the same notebook. A woman at the next table caught my eye and smiled, and I realized I was finally ready to start opening up to people again, not just about the easy things, but the messy, painful things too. Because that's what makes us human, right? The mistakes, the heartbreak, the ways we learn to stand up for ourselves even when it's difficult. Jason's story and mine will always be a part of each other, I guess. But I don't have to live in his shadow anymore. I don't have to carry the burden of his lies or the opinions of people who never knew the whole story. I sold my car to fund my brother, yeah, and it broke me in ways I never expected. But it also showed me what real strength is, not in what you hold on to, but in knowing when to battle and when to let go. So here I am. No Hollywood ending, no ideal redemption. Just a quiet kind of peace that comes from finally hearing the truth, painful as it is, and picking myself anyway.